What is up? My name is Kaylee Lasit. I'm here with my mother, Pastor Donna Lasit, and we're in the middle of a video series called Asking for a Friend, which she is absolutely unprepared for because she doesn't know the questions, which is so fun for me. So here we go. Today, we're going to talk about loving people. And specifically, we want to talk about how do you love people? And I think love is a huge topic, obviously, but how do you love people who get on your nerves?
Nobody ever gets on my nerves.
No, it's true. You're just too perfect.
Oh, man, that is a loaded question right there.
It is.
There's something, we're all called to do, which is to love everybody. I mean, Jesus even talks about we have to love our enemies. We have to, so that's not an option. But I do think there can be strategies. There's two different thoughts that I have right now. One of them is my personal life. I don't have to surround myself and my personal world constantly with people that maybe are not my people in that sense. So my close friends are not going to be people that drive me nuts. But when we're pastoring and we're leading, there's going to be people that just rub you wrong. And I always have to go back to that verse where it's like iron sharpens iron.
Right.
I have to look at every relationship that God puts in my life as there's a purpose for it. And so often the people that are asking questions at the wrong time or poking, just situations or stirring up drama, even people like that, I have to stop and say, okay, Lord, why are they in my world? And is this something where I am called to pastor them and to shepherd them? And there's some area in their life that God, you're revealing to me that I'm going to build relationship and then we're going to have a conversation with that. And I think that there's been some people along the journey that at first always had their foot in their mouth and they would just rub me wrong or they would just kind of get under my skin. And yet the closer I got to them and got to the reason why they sometimes acted that way or said those things or behaved that way, I think it helped me see them differently.
Right.
And you and I have even talked about that. There's people that were pastoring that honestly in the end end up being very dear to our hearts.
Right.
And we see through it. So I think some of those times I have to say, okay, Lord, why are they in my life? And sometimes that's for them. And sometimes that's for me.
Right.
Sometimes I have to get to the bottom of something in my own heart. Why does that bug me so bad? Oh, because I feel like they question my authority, or I feel like disrespected, and then I have to go back and do some heart work in me. So I think you have to ask the Lord, why is this iron sharpening? And who's it for?
Right.
And generally, it's a little bit of both.
Right. So then I think what I'm hearing from you is that it's almost a different answer based off of the sphere of relationship that they're in, right? There's different levels of relationship, different contexts of relationship, and love might look differently. So let's talk about a couple different spheres. So what about in, again, just off the cuff, in marriage, when you love your spouse, but you don't like them in the moment?
Also, it's never happened.
Never, not once.
Pretty much perfect, just joking. And I am, no. I think that in marriage, okay, so let's talk specifically about marriage. There's moments where you have to step back, and usually when I'm irritated by something, it's usually something going on in me.
Right.
And so I have to be careful about assuming that it's just driving me crazy because it's something he does. Sometimes it needs a conversation, and sometimes we avoid those conversations. We don't want to fight. It's easier to just be resentful. But, in the end, it's not easier to be resentful.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think it's Lord, is this a conversation I need to have? This is a repeated behavior. This is constant. And, but again, it's okay, but what's going on with me? Because there was a season I remember where I found myself really agitated with Doug. But actually what the Holy Spirit was pointing out in me is that I wasn't managing my time well. And so there was and then the person that's closest to us ends up getting the spillover of my frustration that literally had nothing to do with him. And I remember one time he walked into the house and I bit his head off. And literally all he had done is put his backpack on the counter. And I was like, that's it. And I remember God being like, wow, and I remember Doug saying, I literally just walked into the room and put my backpack down, like, period. And I was like, whew, that's me.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we have to be like, we have to get practical with ourselves. Is it rubbing me wrong because I'm tired and I'm not managing my time well? Or I've said yes for me in the early years of ministry. I said yes to everything. Therefore, like, I was just constantly one straw away from breaking.
And the early years of ministry for you was also the early years of marriage.
Yes.
Like, all of that was at the same time.
It was like honeymoon youth camp.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I had to learn, in marriage that so often other things were building. If I'm feeling irritated by the person I love more than anybody in the world, God is going to bring attention to something. It might be my schedule. It might be also like just connection with Doug outside of work, because we do work together and we live together and, all those things. And so it might be we need some downtime together, and planning those times kind of like eases just that tension.
Yeah. Contrast that with love in motherhood. Would there be differences, similarities?
I think similarities.
Yeah.
I think the difference would be, as kids are growing, they go through different stages. And so when I find myself irritated, sometimes in the early years, it's because...
You've never been irritated with me.
I mean, my kids are the best kids in the world, which they are. But I would be like, something's not working. And I remember one time you were getting harder and harder to deal with. And now I had Tessa and Kai come along.
Right.
And every time we got to nap time, it was like a struggle. And you had, basically an outline of why you did not need naps.
Right.
And all the things. And I had to, all of a sudden one day, I felt like the Holy Spirit said, she's not tired. Because you were 5.
Right.
I wanted you to have a nap. I needed you to have a nap.
Yep.
And I would be like, okay, you just outgrew something and it's not working anymore. And so I had to, when I get frustrated as a mom or I feel that thing, I had to stop and be like, okay, she's 5. So guess what? She doesn't have to have a nap. But what I need is space for a second.
Right.
Because I'm trying to get my work done in the cracks. And so I changed it to quiet time. And I was like, you can read. I would spread out books everywhere. I would, give you all these options to do, but you're going to have some quiet time.
Yeah.
And that solved the problem. So I think sometimes with kids, it's like, have they outgrown my schedule? Have they outgrown what was working for a year is not working anymore? Or is there some dynamic that we have to like face or address in terms? I remember one time I was like, my schedule is not working anymore. Having 3 kids, this is like not working, because what I was trying to do is work every day and mother every day. Like, be and trying to do that for me, my personality, oh my word, it was not working.
Yep.
In fact, it meant I was guilty all the time and irritated all the time. Because when I was meeting with a student or having a pastoral or worship meeting or whatever, I was like, an hour from having to do something. I was just never fully anywhere. So for me, personality-wise, it worked better for me to have like Tuesdays and Thursdays full on, where I'm just at work all day. Right. I have you guys taken care of and I get home in time to, feed you. And on Thursday nights was rehearsal, so I didn't even have that, but Doug took that night. Right. So just even address the schedule, like your personality, all of those things, like what works for you. Right. And the moment I changed that, the dynamic with me and you guys felt like very different. Wow. Because then like Wednesdays when I was at home, I did take you to the park. Like we connected on all the ways. And you felt like I was actually fully present until the afternoon. So work out your schedule in the different seasons. So assess your schedule and assess your kids as they change and they grow, because kids grow.
What I love about that is I think what I'm hearing from you is it makes love a personal responsibility and it's decision and it's strategy. Yeah. And it's not always just feelings and butterflies with your husband and just overwhelming love for your kids, but you might love them by being strategitic with them. Yes. And then the feelings come. I think that's incredible. Yeah. Personal responsibility.
And asking yourself what's not working and why.
Right. Yeah.
I
like it's okay. Just admit it. Yeah.
Women that are like, they just keep going on with the craziness. And I'm like, something's not working. Let's address it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then shift that towards friendships. Yeah. because love and friendships is also an up and down thing, and relationships come and go. And I think something that a lot of women wrestle with, I've wrestled with it, I know you've wrestled with it over the years, we all do, is how do you know, like, okay, I've done everything that I can, now it's time to draw the line. Love and boundaries is a hard topic of conversation.
Sure
Can you
is.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I think what I don't like about culture today and the word boundaries is that we abuse that idea and it starts to get unbiblical.
Right.
So to me, a boundary is not like you're cut out of my life, which is kind of like what I see. Like, peace out, you hurt my feelings, you rubbed me wrong, like I'm not going to be your friend anymore. That's not biblical. That's because it says to love even your enemies. It does not say that. But wisdom is you also, it says in the Bible, to surround yourself with people that really bring life and health to you. So I think there is times in my life where I have had to, I view it, you know, Doug talks about us living circumspectly, more like a circle. And so there's times where a friend will move, I move them to an outer circle. Like I have my inner core of people that, you know, they are really healthy. They bring me up. And then there's some times where I'm like, you know, every time I'm around that friend, I feel like it goes into gossip or it goes negative or I feel myself like just not feeling like edified. I will not constantly surround myself. And it doesn't mean I'm like going peace out. It just means I'm like, think about this. You only have so much time, virtue, energy to invest. Every relationship is an investment. And so every season, I'm like, Lord, what are the relationships that I'm going to invest in? I'm going to actually put money in their bank account. That's obviously my marriage. That's obviously my kids. And that's obviously our church and our leaders. But beyond that, it's like, who are those people that you want me to put an investment in? Just friendship-wise, that's time. And so sometimes at different points, the Lord will be like, hey, you know, and I don't mean this in a bad way, so I hope but I've grown past that. Like at that seat, they're not growing. I want to be around people that are growing. So my personal friendships, I'm actually more picky than ever. And I think my circle even has gotten smaller through the years. The people that I allow that real close access. Not because I think I'm better, but because I'm very aware of how that impacts my world. You know, does that answer your question?
Do you think that there ever is a point where with friendships, where you can say it's time to love from a distance and I'm going to peace out?
Absolutely.
What would be the criteria of a context like
That's
that
an awesome
to you?
question. I think there's times when I feel like it's, and that word gets way overused, but when it is toxic in terms of every time I'm around that person, they are literally talking about other people. They will automatically go into another ring for me. I will be pastoring them, but I'm not going to be friends with them. Like so I'm just not going to surround myself with people that are just like that. I think also this is a type of friend that I move to the outer periphery. It's friends that I sense competition in. That we have a conversation and everything goes like they have to up it and they have to up it and I'm like, bye. Not my people. I want to be around women that celebrate each other. And and you can tell. When someone gets quiet and I feel like I can't say the positive things that are going on in my life, it's a flag for me. So one flag doesn't bump them. You know, they had a rough day. But if every time I'm around them, I'm feeling bad about the things I can talk about or there's competition. So I think that is one of the biggest things. If I feel there's a competition, they kind of move. I don't bring them close to my heart.
So you would you just kind of naturally move people around versus like
if there's an obvious like this happened, I'll have an honest conversation. I remember one conversation I had years ago, and it was with a friend that didn't understand my life. And so every time I was around her, she was like, "You don't spend time with me. You're too busy with the church," and she was almost pitting the church against that friendship. That required a hard conversation where I just sit down and be like, I am choosing to do this with my life. This is what I want to do with my life. And if that does not work and you can't be with me and not talk about that, then I release you from that.
Right.
And it was hard.
Yep.
But that friend came back later and completely understood. But there was, a few years where we didn't really hang out.
Totally. So then one last question for you.
Yeah.
And it feels like a very macro question, but I think it's so good to talk about.
Yeah.
Just the word love, loving all, loving people, love. How would you compare and contrast like biblical godly love to worldly love?
Yeah. I think worldly love is what you can get and godly love is what you can give. Like in a real macro level.
Yeah.
It's like the world loves people that are like them. The world loves people that can do something for them, that makes them feel good. I think our mandate as Christians is we have to love anyways.
Right.
We have to, and when I love somebody, like I'm going to think the best about them.
Yeah.
Even when I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I am going to choose to love them anyways.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose to have grace from them. Doesn't mean they're going to be my best friend.
Right.
But I'm going to choose to love them. I think about people that don't live a lifestyle that I agree with.
Right.
I can love them. I can have relationship with them.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's harder when you get outside of God's view of love.
Yeah.
Because God sent his son because he loved us so much.
Right.
It's sacrificial.
Yeah.
So God's love is sacrificial and it will hurt sometimes.
So good. Yeah.
It's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the world's love is really more based on something that is like beneficial.
Right. Right.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think it totally makes sense. And I think it comes back to what you were kind of talking about earlier, where love it's a personal responsibility and it's a choice.
Yep.
And it's something that you choose and you get strategic with.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you have any last thoughts for us about
I just
love?
think, for goodness sakes, kindness is love. And
that's so basic, but so good.
it's so basic.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah.
you hear people even post, I laugh, people post things about kindness.
Right.
But then their life,
Yeah.
I watch how they interact with someone. I'm like, you can post all you want. That's a great quote on kindness.
Right. Yeah.
Be kind to the person at Starbucks.
Yep.
Who didn't get your drink right.
Right.
Be kind to that person that said something that hurt your feelings.
Yep.
And instead you lashed out either publicly or whatever.
Right.
Be kind.
Right.
And going back to, honestly,
Yeah.
this one scripture is something that guides me every day of my life, which is Jesus when, he said, what's the greatest, what is the greatest commandment? It's to love the Lord God with all your heart, but it's also to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And I always think, am I loving people? Like if I was them, am I loving them like I would want to be loved in their place?
Right.
When they have messed up, when they've done something,
Yeah.
That person in line that, you're waiting in line at Starbucks and you're so annoyed.
Right.
And I mean, that's just a basic thing in life, but who knows what they've gone through?
Yeah.
Who knows? And 2 questions I ask myself all the time with relationships is, what do I not know about them? And what am I assuming about them?
That's so good.
We can love so much better
Yeah.
if we constantly have those questions in our mind.
Right.
Like, is there something I don't know? Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe they're sick. Maybe they have a headache.
Right.
Maybe they just had a fight with their husband. Maybe
Right.
they just lost a loved one. And then what am I assuming about them?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they have a bad attitude. I'm assuming that they're a horrible person when they say that.
Yeah.
So I think those questions help me come back to a place of like, I'm going to love people even when they're not at their best.
Right. Okay, I lied. I have one more question for you. I think as I'm listening to you talk, I'm picturing a woman who maybe is a little bit discouraged in her growth journey in love. You start talking about, but Pastor Donna starts talking about how kindness is love. And she's discouraged because she knows she struggles with kindness.
Yeah.
Is it possible to grow in the way that you love?
Yeah. Well, here's the first thing. If you're struggling with an area in your life, could be any area in your life, you become like who you worship, for one. And I would say stop trying to change your behavior and change what you're focused on.
Right.
If you begin to really draw into Jesus,
Yep.
you are going to become more like Jesus.
Yep.
And so it's like, I can tell those that really spend time with Jesus.
Oh, that's so
because
good.
I watch them grow in this area. I've watched it in my life.
Right.
The closer I am to Jesus and the more years I go, it's easier and easier and easier to love people that have hurt me, that have done crazy things, whatever. It's because of who I'm with, not just trying to change your behavior. It's like, become like Jesus by worshiping God, by putting your attention, by putting him first. Worship is what you put first in your life. So put him first and watch how God slowly, you transform into the likeness of God. You know?
Ooh, that'll take the pressure off.
Yeah,
that's
take the pressure
so
off.
good.
Don't try to do better.
That's so good.
Doesn't work for me. I'm like, nope, spend time with Jesus. That helps every time.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you.